Hello, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm SoapyRao. If you're wondering who this legendary, godlike figure talking to you at this point in your life is, welcome. This is the SoapyRao show. If you're new to this, yeah, exactly. What were you thinking? But if you're a regular, hey, I always get confused by the size chart. I never know what size to pick. I mean, I know my size. Hey, come on, let's not be childish about it. I'm talking about, of course, it's strange that they have these, especially when you go into like the clothing section online shopping, and they have these size charts. And by the way, if you're living in America, the clothes there just are up by 3x. Like when I used to study there, I used to shop in the kids section because it's crazy. Like a small in America is still big. And I used to just feel like I need to eat more red meat and bulk up and become like a nice boy. But yeah, didn't happen. I don't like the way the American sizes fit. I just don't like how it drapes on my shoulders. It's slopey. I don't have slopey shoulders, but it's SoapyRao. That's probably a new name I can work with. But yeah, European sizes are much more appropriate to me. I don't know why European sounds British, but I suppose it's a part of it. But they left. Hey, but even with the sizes of everything, like I don't know, it's weird. Like you feel when it comes to ice cream, they have like there's a place in Bangalore called Corner House, which if you visit Bangalore, you must go there. It's lovely. Their chocolate ice cream. I mean, they were hot chocolate fudge. Oh, they have a size. They have junior. They have a regular. I think they have a junior, tall. I don't know. Tall is Starbucks. That's the size. Yeah, a Starbucks tall is the smallest, if I'm not mistaken. But I like how we know the place of a size, right? We just, I think it kind of gives out the arrogance of a place or a country. Like when you are small is called tall, you're like, yeah, I like things super size. I'm American, bitch. And that's how they do it. Like grande, venti, massive sizes. I think the venti in Starbucks, I don't know if they, and anyway, the venti in Starbucks in the US is I think 32 ounces, which is I think 1 liter, if I'm not mistaken. People drink 1 liter of coffee, and that's just to get their day started. But the moment that Starbucks comes to India, they kind of Indianize it. And when I Indianize it, I don't mean it's always a good or bad thing. Like, of course, they have, like Pizza Hut has got like chicken tikka masala pizza, and it's the whole deal, like except for like maybe the naan, which is the pizza bread. Everything has got chutney, they got onion. It's like, what the fuck? But even these guys, like McDonald's, they don't have a hamburger. It's a lamb burger, which of course they have to do for, I think, religious sentiments. But even Starbucks, I don't think they have a venti in India. I don't think they have, because first of all, who the fuck's going to go say venti in India? Because like it's got a V, it sounds different. They're like, vento, that's a car, no. But the biggest size I think is a 16 ounce, but they don't even have ounce. I don't think they have the big sizes here, because people aren't stupid enough to drink 1 liter of coffee and that much milk and pay 1,000 rupees for coffee, because that's what it'll probably cost. They'd rather go to Corner House and have a junior, which I would do. And yeah, I don't get the sizing charts, because I think overall we're smaller. Exactly. Dick joke coming? No. But I think there is appropriate consumption, which I really hope we stick to this, because if we go down the American sizing charts and we sort of try to fill in the sizes for an American small or a venti, we're going to have some issues with scarcity of resources very quickly, very soon in our country. So be aware of that. But yeah, aware of it. I don't think anyone had that issue. Correct. But what was I actually going to talk about? Nothing. I had something on my mind. I don't know what I had on my mind. But I was, yeah. Now, online shopping, it's something which I really am thankful for, because I don't have to go to a shop, feel awkward. Because I realize that I need assistance, and I'm happy using assistance from people who are willing to offer their help. But I just like it online. I feel powerful when I shop online. I feel like I don't have to buy it, but I can just add shit to my basket, and I just feel all like, oh yes, 18 pairs of shoes, bring it on, 35 pairs of underwear, yes, and I'm a double XL biatch. I wish they had, in the same sizing conversation, that they had a small waist which would suit me with a giant accommodation. Just so that I can fill up the basket. You know what I mean? Just to live out a fantasy. Like, excuse me, sir, what's your waist size? 30. What's your dong size? I'm a 32-inch there as well. No one has to believe you. It's online. See, because if you go to the store and do that shit, the guy's like, nah. Like, I remember once going, and this is when you're a boy, you go, your mum takes you. This is before the days of shopping online. You go to Commercial Street, where all the shops in Bangalore existed, and they all were lined next to each other. You would buy a bra, a pin, a chuddy, and toys, and go to Woody's, which was a place where you'd get dosa, then restock your energy, then again go down the street, then buy nail polish, go down buy earrings, then go to West Side, which is right next to the police station, and then you finish the stretch of Commercial Street, and then you're take an auto. But if you don't have enough money, then you stop halfway through Commercial Street and take a left and go down up the lane, where it's basically budgeting your shopping. And I remember my mum and I going when Jockey was new. Before that, what did we buy? We had VIP, but Jockey was open, and the lady's like, yes madam, what are you wanting? And she said, underwear for my son. And she's like, what size? Before I could answer, my mom's like, he's a small. I'm like, hey woman, don't smash my hopes so soon in life. But I was a small. I still am. It's to do with waist, by the way. It's not to do with girth or with capacity. I wish they had chuddies based on capacity. Like in golf, your driver is like a 300 and something cc. That's how the head is measured. That's so stupid. But I wish they... Damn it. Yeah. Dick jokes. What to do? But yeah, clearly I haven't matured and become a dad. But someone said the other day, Sandeep, are you going to start doing dad jokes? I'm like, there's nothing, no such thing as dad jokes in my vocabulary. I'm just going to continue doing what I find funny. And if you call it dad jokes, that's be it on your head, woman. But I'm going to... I feel my words have to be more responsible. I feel a shift. It hasn't really sunk in. I haven't really felt a profound shift in my mindset, but I can kind of feel it coming on, that this is a new me being born. But yeah, it's clearly not sunk in fully because I've realized that I can't do milk, man. It's not about lactose, and I think it may be lactose. I haven't got myself checked for it, but I got myself checked for this enzyme, which is a thing for celiac disease, and I don't have it. But I can't do coffee with milk anymore. The other day, an aunt said to have some coffee and go, and I was constipated 3 days, bloated, gassy. And I think my baby has inherited my gassiness because she lets it rip, and I'm very proud of her. But I can't do, especially these fancy coffees like the frappes and the lattes and the enchiladas, whatever they call it. Enchiladas are a Mexican dish, but the yacachilos and the emachinas and the little chiquitas, I can't do this. I just need black coffee. I like it. Exactly. I like it tall. I like it long. But no sugar. Sugar once in a while, it's a treat. But I can't do that flappery, icy, creamy with a lot of creamy head or whipped cream, whatever they call it. It's just too sickeningly sweet for me. That's a sign of me becoming older. Besides that, I really like the Starbucks banana bread because they put these little chocolate chips in it, and it's oh so sinful. But I got a craving for carrot cake. You might have heard it when I was talking to Dada Gunamuktananda, and I actually ended up getting it and eating it, combined the two, from this place in Bangalore called Happy Belly Bakes. It's a lovely place run by a friend of mine. If you are curious about carrot cake, they have it with a cream cheese frosting. Oh, exotic, good carrot cake. Nice balance of cinnamon and sugar. But I like something about it. It's moist and it's nice. No, you're not going down that path. Yeah, but it's really good to eat. So you should try it. But why am I talking about food? Am I hungry? Yeah, because I haven't eaten anything. I'm on a fast. Yeah. But yeah, folks, I hope I have nothing profound to share on today's episode. Because my guest is going to do that for you. She is Charlotte Lockhart. She's the co-founder of 4 Day Week and 4 Day Week Global. They are introducing the concept of a 4-day week with the 100-80-100, which is 100% remuneration, 80% time, which is 20% less than a 5-day week, if you can do the maths, and 100% productivity. We talk about her journey as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist, and as the founder and co-founder of the 4-day week, and how they're applying that model to various countries who are willing, and various companies that are willing to adopt this into their practice. or willing to adopt this practice into their way of operating, or the way they operate into their practice, depending on how you want to take it. Basically, these guys want to get the 4-day week in their lives, and Charlotte and her company are helping them do it. How cool is that? She and I have a fun conversation about her life, about her journey, about living in New Zealand, and various other fun things. And I'm sure you'll enjoy what she has to share, because she's a woman who's experienced a lot in life and has a lot of knowledge about things that may and most likely will interest you. So let's get into that conversation with Charlotte Lockhart, co-founder of 4-Day Week, coming up on the other side. Thank you for listening. As always, take care of yourselves. Till next week, goodbye. God bless. Take care of yourselves. Cheers. Catch you on the other side. Charlotte Lockhart, welcome to the SoapyRao show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, no, thank you for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
I'm very excited, and as I mentioned earlier, you're my first guest from not even down under, further down under, from New Zealand. So I really am excited to talk to you at this time, because you're doing some really, really amazing work in the, I don't know if work-life balance is the right space, but in just sort of helping people get a much more fulfilling life out of the fact that they have to work, but it's still a way to manage that in a better way. But before we get to the 4-day week and how that entire sort of movement began, how are things in your personal space? Because you've obviously been a business advocate, you're a philanthropist, you're an entrepreneur, and you've been doing so many things. And maybe I think the point to start with is, how did all of that sort of come into context when you had to go into this pandemic enforced lockdown? Because I sort of think that's a place where a lot of people's lives changed over maybe overnight, over a week, or a few months. So maybe we can start from there and how you were placed at that point in time.
Well, I was at, and there will be listeners who were in the same place. I was actually quite pleased to be told to go home and do nothing for a little while. And unlike like many people, we had a very busy time just before the pandemic, because we had done this whole 4-day week thing, and we had launched the book, and we really were launching the concept of 4-day week global. We'd had a very big 3 or 4 months before Christmas, and then we'd been on the book tour since the 3rd of January. And so, and we were about to, we'd come back to New Zealand via a number of other countries, the pandemic following us, I think, and always says that he's patient zero. And we were supposed to be going back to the US for a whole series of meetings with the likes of Microsoft. Andrew was speaking at Wharton Business School, but all of those meetings started closing down, and it became clear that we weren't going to have to go back to the US. And so in New Zealand, we had a hard lockdown.
Right.
The country completely closed down. And
yeah, some of the more severe lockdowns as lockdowns went.
Severe lockdown.
Yeah.
But we live in a nice place, and we were both very tired. So actually it forced us to take things quietly for a while and look after ourselves and just have a rest, really. But also what we found, because of course we talk about the future of workspace, and we talk about reducing work. And we found that actually it was just time for us to take a step back and have a bit of a look at what was happening, because the pandemic, and certainly that was for many people, but the pandemic might have been a lot worse for the work environment than it actually ended up being. And we might have had pretty much the entire economy going, you know what, I just would rather have a day of work, let alone worrying about whether there's 4 of them. But we found that we had some much more interesting conversations, because of course Zoom gives you that ability to connect with people in a different way that previously you would have flown to Seattle or India or wherever to actually catch up with people and have a face-to-face meeting. Zoom and the pandemic made us take all those conversations online. And so what we found was that we had access to a very different market of people. And so that in itself was quite interesting. And people often ask me, what do I do? And actually, you know what I do? I spend my entire life having really interesting conversations with people.
Mm.
And that was the case before the pandemic, but it went to Zoom during the pandemic.
Mm.
And so, I think there were some real advantages in that
Yeah.
space. And so for us personally, it was a time of reflection, and a time to sort of value what we had already achieved and to really look at what we wanted to achieve in the future. And I think that's probably a wee bit the same for most people. Once we got over the initial shock of it all,
Yeah. Yeah.
as we've come out of the pandemic, what we see in the workplace with people's choices around work is that they want a different way of working, and that the Great Resignation is a phrase that kind of pulls all of that together. And
Yeah.
people want to work differently, and if employers can't offer them that, then they'll go find someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's on every sort of level, right? From an introspective level to a personally sort of revisiting what your financial expectations are, to even your professional goals, to what you want out of your job, from satisfaction, of fulfillment, etc., etc. I think everything was sort of put through the filter, and I think a lot of people arrived at decisions which you just mentioned. But I want to just take away from the work environment to the environment of your home country, being New Zealand.
Yes.
I've sadly never been there, but of course, cricket
come.
being, I must come, and I'm so keen on coming to a place like that because it's so romantic in some sense. Because I've been to the closest I've been to New Zealand is Western Australia. I went to Perth and didn't leave a good taste in my mouth. Let's be honest. It was one of those places which was like, what's going on over here? It's like supposedly, we went to Fremantle, which was lovely. My wife and we had come for the Perth Fringe, so. Some aspects of Perth weren't really nice, but some were really nice. So I don't want to diss the entire city for a few experiences. But when you think of New Zealand, of course, I think there are some Game of Thrones episodes shot of there, so it's a lot more in the mainstream. But it's so far away from even India. So the entire culture is, I'm not very aware of it, but when you grow up over there and you work and you do business in a country like New Zealand, how does it shape your outlook towards a work week or maybe even a work day? Or is it more island in approach? Or because when, in my head, when I think of an island country, it's either Sri Lanka or you think of maybe Hawaii, or you think of, that's a state, of course. But what is the approach to a daily life over there and growing up for you? How was that in? I think you said you're from Auckland. So
I'm from Auckland. Yeah.
How did that shape your perspective on all aspects of life? If that's even something which is not too vague.
No, look, I think it's quite interesting because New Zealand. So I'm obviously of English descent, although quite a few generations ago. So by no means connected to England at all. But the New Zealand, they used to say that you go to New Zealand, you step back 20, 30 years in time as one of those sort of places. It's not like that now. It hasn't been for quite some time. And the internet and connectivity gives us that. As growing up, my generation, we all did, or not all of us, but there was a large part of us that did an overseas experience in OE after we finished school, and in general, you would go to Australia or possibly the UK. And what has changed in time is that's become a lot more diverse. People go to Canada or the US or India, or they go to all sorts of it's a much more global conversation. But we're still a very outward-focused nation. The pandemic has made us a lot more insular, which is not very attractive, I think.
Yeah.
And it will be nice to see that change as people feel more safe in the global world. But New Zealand has its own story on the global stage, and it's quite proud of it. And so growing up, it's a very it is relatively it's a relatively safe place to grow up.
Yeah.
And we have a relatively good healthcare, relatively good schooling and things like that. I mean, our universities are certainly not in the complete top of the world, but they're certainly still excellent universities. Our hospital system is there's always room for improvement, but
of course,
there is. But at least we have a national health system.
Oh, so you do have a national health system. Okay, so you work on a similar model.
We do, and we have a social welfare system, and so we have a society that sits. No matter who's in government, whether they're left or right, it's always they are relatively centre. And everyone has a heart for building a nation for all. So we have that. We do have there is obviously we have the Maori population, and there is a portion of that do feel aggrieved by the whole colonial experience. They feel didn't work terribly well for them, and so we have the politics that goes around that, which is challenging sometimes, but I think sometimes you need things in your society that challenge you so that you can continue to move forward. New Zealand's a reasonably progressive nation. We were fairly early in the conversation to have gay marriage and all of those sort of things. We've got good gender balance in the workplace. It's not perfect, and actually that's one of the things that the 4-day week or versions of reduced hour working actually really help with. So we have a sense of relatively equal opportunity. We do have poverty, but the poverty that we have isn't extreme as it can be in other nations. For example, we're in India. We also don't have we do have the gap between the rich and the poor in New Zealand is getting wider, like it is everywhere in the world. And I certainly don't want to diminish that at all. But our most wealthy person is only 400th on the UK wealth list. So our wealth in relative terms to the world. But as a consequence, we're a nation that is able to achieve a lot on a fairly low budget. And we have quite a lot to do with various charities in New Zealand with our philanthropy and our business, Perpetual Guardian, also has quite a lot to do because as a trustee company, we manage a lot of funds for charities and funds that are applied to charitable giving. So we have quite a lot. So we achieve a lot with those charities with the sort of budgets that you take that charity and you pop it in the US and then suddenly they're having a gala. I mean, the Princess Trust here had it's a UK initiative from the Prince of Wales, but the American team had a gala the night before the Met Gala and raised a phenomenal amount of money that just, in somewhere like New Zealand, we'd only dream of raising money like that. So there's a modesty that comes with being a New Zealander, I think.
It's what you said is, it's also, I think, one of those situations where you do have, you compared to India especially, but I think in general, you have a smaller population, I think, especially.
We have 5 million people, so
which is my neighborhood. So it's I mean, jokes apart, I think you do work with a model which, implementation could be easier and disparity could be, the gap could be reduced because of numbers. The moment numbers are less, I think 5 million is around what Singapore is. And you see countries like that having a better governance, better sort of things. And of course, none of it is a generalization. There are issues, there are social sort of things that do come up. But on that front, being quite remotely located geographically and being surrounded by a lot of island nations which look to New Zealand and Australia for some sense of representation when, if I'm not mistaken, like the Pacific Islands look at the closest point being New Zealand or Australia. What is sort of you mentioned the local, the indigenous population. So what is the integration like? Because of course it's been many years since the colony was set up, and now of course there's a lot of reparations being asked for, a lot of things with changing the name. And I read recently, I heard recently, how youngsters from the indigenous population, the Maori, using music in I think in Auckland to come up. I think it's maybe beatboxing or some kind of musical form to express their identity and their sort of history and their kind of pride in their past. So how do you integrate a population in the 21st century, being geographically quite remote compared to mainstream Europe or mainstream North America, and kind of retain some sense of the New Zealand, the culture of the country, maybe also then also keep economic progress, social progress. So because you're in the space of business and you're in the space of philanthropy and you're in the space of developing new programs. So I'm just trying to understand. It's quite an interesting space from what I hear, from what you've told me. So because it's almost like you can experiment and not just go down the American route of development or go down the things that are done in the past. So is there an opportunity to create models, which you mentioned, like the four-day week? But in addition to that, what have you witnessed over your years of working there?
Well, look, the interesting thing about our society, and just going back to the indigenous population, I mean, in the 50s, and I'm not quite, to be fair, don't know when it stopped, but certainly in the 50s and possibly the 60s, young Maori were not allowed to speak Maori in school, and were punished for doing so. And so the language struggled because it was discouraged enormously. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing now, and we have a thing called the Waitangi Tribunal. Waitangi is a place in New Zealand where the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, which is the treaty between the Maori and the Crown, Queen Victoria at the time, around how New Zealand was going to be owned and governed. There is discrepancies between the Maori version and the English version, so there's things that go there. But it was recognised in the 80s that something needed to be done, and so we had the Waitangi Tribunal, which was set up to acknowledge the grievances of the past, work through them, and have a process by where there was reparation to the tribes, iwi. As far as that's concerned, and so therefore you've got a legal and a financial structure that sits in place and starts to sort of take care of all of that. But your point is well made, because actually at its heart it's how you feel in your heart and your sense of cultural identity, and so we are seeing a resurgence in the use of Maori language, not just by Maori, but in our ordinary lives. We've got more and more signage goes up that's bilingual. There's a bilingual usage on the television and the radio and in the media, and the use of Aotearoa as our country name as opposed to New Zealand. And I mean, so even Vodafone, if you come into New Zealand and you're on Vodafone, it will say Vodafone Aotearoa, not Vodafone NZ. And so there are elements of where we are acknowledging that we are a bicultural nation. But having said that, we're actually far more than a bicultural nation, because Auckland particularly, but New Zealand as a whole, we have a huge amount of people from other cultures as well. We have lots of Indians. We've always had lots of Indians.
I don't know what makes Indians go. They go
all over the place. They just want to live in a colder place. I don't know.
I can't leave my house, and these Indians 100 years back were just like, and it wasn't even like a flight.
No, and so we've had, and Indians have been coming to New Zealand for generations. We have Chinese population that have been coming, I mean, for generations. I mean, they came in the 1800s with the gold rush. So we have a large Chinese population. We have a very large Pacifica population, as you can imagine. The islands in the Pacific, we have large cultures there, and more and more our city, Auckland, and our country and our economy is so much more diverse. And so I think that doing business in New Zealand needs to recognise that diversity. But one of the great things about it is for a lot of businesses that are in the technology space is New Zealand's quite a good incubator place to try out a product and see how it works with this Western and diverse and educated population.
Yeah.
That they can then take that test tube of what they've done and then take that out into the bigger world and put in a product that they've tested. So that works quite well in our economy. But when you're looking at something like the future of work, and you're looking at, I mean, I guess the question that we have around the whole future of work thing is why do we want to work differently?
Right.
And actually, where the future of work recognises that the way that we have been working in the past isn't fit and healthy for our society and our economy, and so therefore we need to find a different way of doing it. And so I don't think anyone's thinking we need to go back to working the way that we used to in the 80s and 90s. I think we all acknowledge that the future of work needs to look different for a variety of reasons: technology, AI, and the like, the fabric of our society, our health, the way that the economy works in a much more international stage. All of these elements say that work needs to look different. So, so this is the exciting thing for us.
I know, and I want to get into
the 4-day week space.
This idea of how a lot of the gaping flaws in the education system and the corporate system were kind of exposed when everything sort of shut down and we were forced to look at it, right, as we spoke about. But what tends to happen, is that you kind of get caught in this rut of thinking in a certain way when you are believed to say that you need to have a job, you need to have certain things in place, right? Like a bucket list, if you want to call it. You need to get a certain sort of check boxes ticked in your academic life. Then you sort of progress towards work. Then the work pays you a certain remuneration, which sort of goes up as you spend more time. It's a reward system. Then you get a family, you get a house, etc., etc., etc. It just sort of goes in that direction. But why would when someone looks at the present day ecosystem, as you mentioned, AI, technology, and the various other social repercussions as a result of mental health, or you look at the family structure, you look at the way in which gender, all these things are progressing, if you want to call it, issues coming up and then getting recognized, and how people are acknowledging their own identity as individuals, as working people, and also revenue streams changing, with the internet, with jobs like, YouTubers or creative aspects opening up. So when someone like you, who's been in this space for the past 25 years, you started out, you've been in it, you've been in the space of business and around it, and influenced by it and influencing it. Maybe could you just talk about how the landscape has changed from when you started to what we're looking at now?
Well, I mean, when I started working, I was working in the Middle East, actually. I mean, I was working a wee bit in New Zealand prior to going there, but my fiance, to be husband, was working in the Middle East at the time. So my main career and work started actually in that Middle Eastern environment, which is quite different.
Yeah,
in the 90s, it was a very different world. It's a little bit more ordinarily westernized now, but it was very different then. It was still very expatty. But when I returned to New Zealand and started to become part of it, there was a real sense of New Zealand being at a tipping point in the journey of where we were doing in terms of being on the international stage. And I think that we have, so one of the things that I often say which is I think a good example of how business has changed in terms of the way that it frames things, is that we've been talking about health and safety in the workplace for the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
But really, we've just been talking safety.
Yeah.
And what has shifted, and was shifting was shifting prior to the pandemic, but only with companies like Unilever and companies that sort of truly decided that they wanted to be a very different style of employer. But they were still the minority.
Right.
But certainly post-pandemic, there is this much larger awareness that we have to acknowledge that our businesses are an ecosystem. And that everything within that ecosystem needs to be working well and needs to be healthy for it to work. So just as our computers need to be debugged, then so do our people. And that's whether they're leadership or whether they're, on the shop floor.
Yeah.
There is this acknowledgement now that to move forward, we want something that's a bit different. But also what's quite different in terms of the conversations that we have with businesses is we're not just talking about work-life balance, and we're not talking about sort of the future of work thing that benefits just the employees. What which of course includes leadership often. We're actually talking about how do you look at your business and work your business so that you get better productivity. And so this is the whole conversation that we have in our space is, and we have this principle called the 100-80-100 rule, where we want people to be paid 100%. We want to work 80% of the time, but we want productivity to remain at 100%. And so therefore, actually what we do when we run our program with people is we help them maintain that productivity and unlock all of those things within their business that allow them to do that so that their people can go home. And the great thing about reducing work time, and so we're not talking about 40 hours or 48 hours as it is in India over 4 days. We are talking about a 20% reduction in the amount of time that you spend at work. And we're also, despite the fact we call ourselves 4-day week, that's the name on the can, we're actually really just talking about reduced hour working. And that might be 5 days a week, but reducing down to less hours on each day. And what we're really talking about when we look at that, and it's kind of the journey that I've been on, not just with this, but also in my own life, having been the mother of two now young men. So is what is the society that I want to leave behind? What is the difference that I want to have made? And I've sort of had this sort of little bit of a push to do this because so I've been given this opportunity, this platform with the 4-day week. It came to us because we ran it in our own company, but we have run with it because we have Andrew Barnes and I have the financial freedom and the ability to use our time. Because we don't have to work in our business to pay our bills. And so therefore we feel a responsibility because we have this opportunity to do something about it, because we really feel that we can make a difference. And for me, the time pressure on that has become truncated because I used to sort of think that's great. People say, how long do you think it's going to take for all this to happen? And I'd go, I don't know, 10 years maybe. We're just going to keep pushing until it happens. But in February of last year, I was diagnosed with incurable cancer. And so for me, I want to really be pushing this now. I mean, I've in all likelihood got plenty of time left. But I don't want to waste any time in having the chance to share with people why it's so important for us to economically and socially and health-wise actually start making these changes to the way we work. And this amazing opportunity that the pandemic has given us with all of that devastation and all of those deaths and all of the disaster that it was, what is going to be the good thing that comes out of it? And if we just go back to a society that hasn't improved, and hasn't
Yeah.
moved forward, then what was what honor are we doing for all of those people who lost their lives? We have to
Yeah.
honor them and make society better, don't
It
we?
feels like a waste if nothing's because everyone's like, oh, my reset, as you said. But if things open up and they're like, yeah, it sounded good when we had nothing to do, but now it's just easy to go back to how things were, which is, as you said, not a waste of life and time. I mean, time is probably not so much the issue, but
It
and
is.
what you said is so. I mean, it's amazing what you're doing with everything you've learned because, you know, sitting in India, which is one of the biggest, and a lot of people are looking at India and the population as, potential investment and potential growth because of this untapped potential that has been here. Um, and the Indian mindset is always you work more hours, you're more successful, you're more productive, you're more likely to do well and get the pat on the back and the fatter paycheck, right?
Mm,
And since I left for university in 2001 or two or somewhere, beginning of this post millennial kind of post IT kind of thing. I just left when the IT sort of thing happened.
mm,
And prior to that, of course, the people who had money and the disparity was there. Everything was there, but it was not as magnified. It wasn't as, there wasn't as much money in India. But I go in 2000, I come back in 2007, and then the IT phenomenon has really kicked in, right? Like with
mm,
outsourcing, with BPOs, with I live in Bangalore, which is of course now the sort of conversation for venture capitalists, for IT, and everything in between. And you kind of notice what that kind of money has done with just unregulated growth, with unregulated construction, traffic, lack of infrastructural sort of capabilities to keep up and cope with that. And then you look on the social front, you look at how the number of people who migrated to cities. I'm going to talk about Bangalore because I live here. It's just the number of people who've come in, the number of sort of startups, unicorns, whatever these words are, just growing. And then you kind of a lot of people get stuck there going, oh wow, it's amazing, the middle class getting stronger, of course, and I agree. But then you kind of look at the other things, which is the effect on health, right? On mental health. You look at the families breaking up. You look at people with what they eat because they're not they're expected to work a number of hours. Then you look at the environmental effect, where it's just, as I said, unregulated growth. You have these tech parks. You have the amount of concrete covered spaces. You have trees going. I was like, it just magnifies and magnifies. And then you look at the actual individual person who's working, who's been given a certain salary which they didn't have, and they're being hired right out of college, and then they're like, wow, it's great, but it takes 10, 15 years for them to go, wait a second, it looked good, but it isn't all that good. And now you have people in 2021 or 2019 to 20 to 21 who are going, you know what, I'll take a hit on my salary. I mean, very few are saying this, but I rather spend time at home. I'd rather do something I enjoy doing. And now you have people doing things which are promoting sustainable practices. You have people doing, you know what, I rather sit at home and focus on some creative aspect of my talent, which I didn't know I could explore. So I'm just
mm.
fast forwarding the past 20 years in 2 minutes.
Look,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think there's a large part of what we see with that. I mean, I have a lot of people go, oh, 4-day week and everything. The young ones just don't want to work as hard. And I'm like,
Now, what I was
good.
going to ask you is how does someone with the intention that you have and your team and your partner have, with the benefits of a 4-day week, and you've said the 180-100, which is the
Mm.
productivity, the remuneration, and also reduced time, justify to a culture or to a country, to a population, that this is the way forward? Because it takes time to tell someone. I mean, I've been
Well,
trying to do it, but I don't have
it
a
does.
4-day
I
week. I
mean,
have a 4-day month. That's all I work.
I mean, I
And
think that the interesting thing, of course, is that for most people, the reasons are all around us.
mhm,
And you're right. The growth of the middle class in places like India is a relatively new phenomenon,
mhm,
and it might take time for people to get through and past the thrill of
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
there is that. But lots of people sort of say to me, the young ones just don't want to work as hard, and I say, great,
yeah.
because what the young ones, the millennials, have seen is they've watched all of the negative effects of overwork. They've watched all of those in their parents.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen what burnout looks like. They've seen the dissolution of marriages and relationships and health. They've been brought up by other people because parents are always working, and they just want something different. And the thing that they want is time. And then they can use it in whatever way they want, whether that be to further educate themselves or spend more time with their family or having time to cook and not eat Uber Eats. And actually, because what we have as a society, of course, is as parents, we always want for our children to have better than we did. We want to give them better opportunities that suit. I always want my children to have things that I didn't. And so and in days gone by, that was a house, a home, or a slightly better home, better food, healthier food, better education, and sort of that Maslow hierarchy of needs. And we were sort of trying to make these things down here better. But now that we are here, what we experience in the developed world largely is that it's not better, it's just more. It's more house. Our children all need to have their own bathrooms.
Yeah.
We need to have more food. So obesity has become a health pandemic for us all around the developed world. And we need to have more education. Really, why?
Right. Yeah.
Why? What are we doing?
Yeah.
We're all chasing each other to get these best degrees from these best universities. Why? What is that actually achieving? We've forgotten. We just so we've just ended up with our children having more. And actually what they want more of, and I say that our children because my children are millennials, what our children are, your young children, your end.
I forgot I'm a father now. I just realized.
We haven't touched on that.
I know.
And I was when my young men were very little, and I did a parenting course by this very famous parenting expert here in New Zealand, and he had a line, a gentleman called Ian Grant. He had a line that he used to use that children spell love Time. And that is just an undeniable part of who we are as people. And so the millennials have, because of course my parents' generation, my mother didn't work. She was home all the time. My father came home from work. He was home for work. He was home for family meals. We went on family holidays together. The weekends were about being a family. Now, of course, in the modern world, mothers work too, and I'm not saying women shouldn't work. My any stretch of the imagination.
Of course, I don't think anyone will mistake you when you say, of course. I think you're a big proponent for.
So both parents are working now.
Yeah.
But also, when parents come home, they've got their iPhones or whatever the technology. They're checking their emails, family holidays and weekends about whether we've got Wi-Fi. And we don't disconnect from work in the same way. And so we don't prioritise family in the same way. And there are other elements out there, like, there's legislation in Europe with the right to switch off, the right to disconnect. And so that, we are recognising that all of these elements are being pulled in. And what we're talking about when we talk about reducing work time, we're actually saying, let's actually put some structure around what being away from work really looks like. And the Microsoft trial, which is often touted as being a huge success, which undeniably it was.
Yeah.
They did it by doing three things at work. They reduced meetings to 30 minutes, no more than 5 people in a meeting, and increased use of Microsoft Teams. And of course, this was prior to the pandemic when we were doing a lot more face-to-face, and so they were saying use more digital technology.
Oh, okay, right.
But what wasn't widely reported is that they actually did 3 things outside of work. They got people to report in on what they were doing for their family, what they were doing for their community, and what they were doing for themselves.
Mm.
And
Okay.
it's about acknowledging as an employer, and I use a line a lot with when I'm talking to business owners. And so if there's any business owners listening, just remember that we borrow our people from their lives.
Mm.
And when you let that sink in and you recognize, and I know it's annoying when someone doesn't turn up because they've got a sick child or something's happened in their personal life, and we just get annoyed. Oh God, why isn't that person at work? But actually, that's their life. And
Yeah.
when they come to the workplace, they are sharing their life with us. And so the modern employer is recognizing that their people and themselves, they have a whole life. And so back to your
Yeah.
point about this, this whole sense of having to work long hours and work and do more work to get a sense of being a sense of achievement. What we're talking about is actually, well, how do we rebalance that and actually acknowledge that achievement comes in many different ways, and a successful family or a successful side gig or a successful thing that's outside of work actually is also a good thing.
I think that is something that I believe is so important. But sometimes when the constant message around you, or the narrative around you is your value is only by your position or your status or your remuneration or your bank balance, it's very hard to constantly, you know, focus on this, that is your individual development, your family, as family health, or your kids and the time you spend. These are such important things. And as I said, I'm in this place now. My we had my wife and I had a baby girl just on the 11th of May. That's why we had to postpone the recording earlier.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm so excited, but at the same time I'm nervous, because while many people I spend time with are like-minded, a lot of the system isn't, right, and you are judged and you're valued on these things. And it's more of an observation when, and since you focus in this space, many times I believe that there is this, while it's a work thing, and maybe this is a question or an observation, but do you feel, and I notice this when people spend 2 hours each way in traffic, or 1 hour each way in traffic, and it just takes an 8-hour shift, but it takes them 12 hours because of commuting. you know have we designed these work weeks, these work hours, to keep a population so caught up in the job or at the workspace that they don't have time to think about the larger picture?
Well, and this is the thing. And so it behooves people like you and I to have these conversations and to share these conversations and actually allow people to be thinking differently. One of the things that I often say when I'm speaking to women's groups, because women, so back to how gender is misaligned, one of the things that women do, and I say women because it's largely women, there are men that do it as well, but it's largely women. When we return to work after having had a child, we go back on reduced time, but we also go back on a completely reduced package.
Okay.
But there are, so you go back to work on a 4-day, working 4 days, and you're on 80% of absolutely everything. So all of the benefits, including income, salary that you get. Those are all those things. So we get, so we do this. We cut our salaries, but then what we do is we do the full-time job.
Which
and so
is so crazy, because I'm looking at my wife going through the first few weeks of nursing, and I'm like, you need a top package in that space. It's so difficult what she's going through, and I think every woman goes through, every mother goes through it, and every potential mother will go through that, and then settling with all those changes that go in your mind and body, going back and being treated less than what, even not even equal, less than what you were getting, right? It's crazy.
Absolutely. And it makes no sense, because generally what happens is women are actually doing the full-time job. So what I say to women's groups when I'm talking to them is that stop doing that. negotiate what you're worth. So you go into the employer and you say, right, so I'm going to do this whole 4-day thing. That's fine. So what does the full-time job look like?
Yeah.
So be clear about what the full-time job is and say, okay, well, if I can achieve that full-time role in 4 days, will you pay me for it? Because if you think about it, what an employer wants is a piece of work out of you. They really should be completely ambivalent as to the amount of time. I mean, okay, there are some jobs which require presence, but for a lot of jobs they don't. And so what women need to be making sure is that they're negotiating their true value. And if they are giving a full-time amount of work, not just in time, but in terms of a productive outcome, then they should be paid for that, and they need to negotiate that. Because if they don't, if women who have the negotiation skills and they have the education and they have the self-confidence and the self-value and clear about what they're doing, if those women don't negotiate it, how is the woman who is cleaning the office floor at night ever going to have that? So we
That
have
dignity
to have these
and
conversations. There's that saying, how do you eat an elephant? It's one mouthful at a time. So we just got to keep having these conversations and finding the things that help us rebalance it. So therefore the conversation is, what do we want to do about India's divorce statistics? What do we want to do about India's obesity statistics? What do we want to do about our environmental damage? What do we want to do about our gender imbalance? All of these things, there are programs that fix and some of them are even at government level that try and fix some of these elements. Here in the UK, they have a sugar tax for obesity.
Oh, that's
so you're trying all of these things. But
but Charlotte, at the same time, try to tell a population which has not had any access to this because of years of poverty that, don't eat sugar, it's bad for you. And they're like, you can sit there saying that sitting in your apartment, which you own, but I've never had chocolate chip cookie. I've never, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I mean, it's so hard
absolutely.
It's so unfair also. You can tell, I eat organic vegetables, it's good for me, and I'm going to quit carbs and I'm going to go on a restricted feeding diet. And they're like, restricted feeding? We didn't have food. We couldn't eat more than a meal a day.
Just give me all of the food. Absolutely. Yeah. And this is the interesting thing, and it's the opportunity for India to actually be clear about how it takes itself, because of course for us in somewhere like New Zealand and the UK and things, because we're so far removed from that sort of poverty, generations removed from it.
But at the same time, sorry for interrupting, but at the same time, right now, I was just reading an article where, because of what's happened with the war in Ukraine, with the pandemic, with supply chain, with Brexit, I think there are people in the UK struggling. I was reading an article by a lady who said she's a caregiver, she has 2 kids, and she said, I couldn't heat up my son's pizza because it's too expensive to put on the oven. While the UK is, of course, I think, removed from many of the poverty inflicted issues that India or Pakistan or Africa is, even people there who are poor are experiencing really a lot of hardship, right?
They are. There is a real hardship that people are going through in all of the developed world. Actually, I mean, the UK is probably no different than the US and Australia and Canada and New Zealand. But the difference is, we have a social welfare system. That will ensure that you don't really starve. You might not be able to eat you might not be able to eat the foods that you've used to being able to eat.
Right.
And you might find that you go hungry from time to time. But the type of poverty you're talking about is being hungry all of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in previous generations, not actually having a journey out of that poverty. And so the difference you've got, and I fundamentally find it quite interesting how the world does develop, because of course in a technology space, let's look at financial markets. Or actually how we managed our finances. So in my generation, we used cash, and my parents wrote checks. And then there were credit cards, and then there's your Apple Pay and all that sort of thing. and a lot of the developed world, check, what's that? You know, they've gone from using cash as a thing straight to some sort of digital technology. They've gone via telephones with a landline they've gone straight to cell phone.
Yeah.
So technology has created, and the route to a stable middle class has been hijacked by technology. But it's also been hijacked by food, and back to your point about chocolate chip cookies, it's been hijacked by food that isn't actually any good for us. And so therefore you end up in a situation. So yes, I do find that quite interesting. I find I was talking to someone a while ago, and I kind of felt like there's a book to be written called in my head there should be a book written called the leapfrog economy, where the developing world leapfrogs a lot of the steps that we took in our space, and comes out up here, and we're actually still behind you because you've just gone straight over here.
It's amazing with digital currency and the way those things work. And the currencies, of course, I mean, the amounts are so small, but you literally do a Google Pay, or you have, as you said, and it's amazing, like the reach of the mobile phone in India has just transformed the landscape.
Oh, look, when we lived I lived in Egypt in the mid-90s, and we were very lucky because we had a landline at home because my husband was the country manager for DHL at the time. And so, we needed to be able to have the landline at home, but nobody else we knew had a home telephone number. So if you needed to get hold of people, you got hold of them while they were at work, generally. And then cell phone technology was sort of coming in. So there was, there was a bit of cell phone technology. I took my children back in 2005, so still quite some time ago. Hey, everyone's got cell phones. I'm like, that's fantastic. The shoe shine guy has a cell phone, right? And the ability to communicate and connect is so fundamental to the way that we can improve our economy. But it comes, as you pointed out with your chocolate chip cookie example, it comes with its own set of problems. And I don't know. I don't know how you solve the chocolate chippy
because just to apply to that same thing is, sorry for interrupting, it's just I feel this happening in a lot of the populations which didn't have, and now suddenly a mobile phone is very affordable. So now they have access immediately to a Facebook or an Instagram, which they don't have the support system to handle and process, right? So there, say a girl whose mother is a maid at someone's house, she now has access to YouTube, and she's seeing videos of Kim Kardashian wearing a $10,000 dress, or she's seeing a local celebrity wearing driving in a certain car with a certain handbag. Now she has this information, she doesn't know how to process it, but at the same time she has influencers telling her that she can be the next millionaire. So it's creating this sickness of need and greed and want. And so the reason I'm asking you this is, how do you then go and tell a corporate, I think so. Let's go into the 4-day week. How do you go tell someone who's so happy just exploiting people with 10 hours, 6 days a week, that no, reduce it to the 4-day week because it will benefit your employees? And how do you tell an employee who's being judged by more hours at the workspace means more, that you're more busy, because people are like, he works from 9 in the morning to 12 at night, or 9 in the morning to 10 at night, and that's supposed to be like, oh, he's more successful. So
he's a high achiever.
How do you sort of, I know there are a lot of juxtapositions here, but how do you introduce your model and this movement into, India's one example,
so there are 3 people who sit in this space, three types of people. There's the person who thinks it's a great idea and just wants to put it into their business and just needs some help making that happen.
Right.
There's the other person who goes, I kind of get why it's a good idea. I'm just not sure that I can do it. I'm not sure. And then there's the person who just wants to exploit people and doesn't care at all. I don't talk to the third person
Yeah.
They can get on with what they're doing because there's no convincing them.
Are they, in
Okay.
your experience, a good percentage of what's going on? Or is
Well,
it more in the middle and
I don't
first?
know. The reality is, most of the people that contact us, of course, are self-selecting.
Of
So
course,
most
yeah.
of the conversations I have are actually with the first two. And
Okay, okay.
so the first one, we have our program that helps companies do that. So if you want to do a 4-day week, we have a program that will help you do that.
Mm.
And we'll discuss around what a 4-day week really is in a
Yeah,
minute
that would
as
be
well.
lovely.
So we have a program directly to help those people who are ready to do something now. And then the other group of people are the middle ones who are prepared to listen. They're prepared to read the book. And if you're one of those people, read Andrew Barnes's 4-day week book, and there are a number of other 4-day week books if you really want to go long on it. But read Andrew's one first, and it's available on Audible as well if you just want to listen.
Of course, yeah. I'll put the link in the description of the
Yes,
episode.
thank
So
you.
yeah, of course.
But don't close your mind to the idea that actually work is going to change,
Mm.
because the Great Resignation is showing us that people want change, and so change will come whether we want it or not.
Yeah.
And so therefore you have to be, so this it's like a freight train coming. You can just decide whether you're on the train or running behind it exhausted. And so for a country like India, which is at the sort of pivot point of being, because India is a real influencer in the world economy,
Yeah.
it needs to actually look at itself. And so we spend a lot of time talking to these middle two types of companies. The other thing, so 4-day week global. So we do two things. We run our programs around the world to help companies do that, and we have global research that's been designed out of Boston College but is run locally. So if we did a program in where you are, or and arguably with a country like India, you don't try and eat that elephant all at once. You just got to go one bite at a time, pick an economy, and actually and pick a city or pick a region and go, look, we're gonna see how we get on there. But we get a local researcher in that area who will then make sure that the research is applicable culturally and language-wise, but also is asking the questions that are appropriate to that nation or to that region or to that city, that ensure that people get the answers to why reducing work hours actually works better in the micro and in the macro. So that's one side of things that we do. The other side of things that we do is that we talk to as many people as possible, and we talk to governments, and we talk to lobby groups, and we talk to politicians, and we talk to interest groups, and we talk to academics and media, and we have all of these conversations that, just sharing the message over and over and over again. And then what we encourage in any region that wants to do this is that you set up a local campaign.
Yeah.
And that local campaign, and we've got one in Ireland and one in the UK, one in the US. We're developing one in New Zealand and Australia and Germany and a couple of other places, Hungary. Is that what you need is people, local people, Indians who believe that this is the way of the future for India, and they come from. You need someone that represents workers, someone that so generally unions or something like that, someone that represents business, so a business forum of some sort, or actually a business that is just doing the 4-day week and is prepared to take that mantle on. Someone representing health and the health benefits, someone representing the environment and the environmental benefits of working less, and someone to represent children and or families.
So this is an entire sort of multi-pronged approach.
Well, it is. And so then each of those people have their own areas that they influence within your society.
Right.
So
and also it's not like a cookie cutter model where you apply the 4-day week, which is developed for Ireland in India. So it's almost like it's a 4-day week which spills over to all aspects of life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's also not necessarily a 4-day week, because lots of people go, oh, I couldn't close my business for a whole day. And my answer to that is just don't try. We
Yeah.
have the 100-80-100 rule. What we're trying to do is cut work time by 80%, so
Yeah.
that people can be doing things. Now,
Yeah.
you talk about an environment where you're working 8 hours, but you're spending 12 hours because
Yeah.
you've got to get there and back. Well, if you work 5 hours,
Yeah.
sorry, 5 days, but shorter hours, you're going in outside of rush hour.
Yeah.
So your
Or if you
commute
work, half
time,
the office works 4 days for the full shift and the other half works, then you're taking 50% of that population off the roads automatically. I mean, at the work.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? So you're changing the way that commuter traffic works,
Yeah.
which of course is good for the environment as well. And then we have, because the pandemic handed it to us on a plate, the
Yeah.
whole work from home thing as
Yeah.
well. So what if you have a future workplace that includes some remote, some flexible, and some reduced? And then bring
Mm.
all of those elements together and say, our future of work looks like all of these elements pulled together, so that we have the best workplace, and it recognizes that people, what we want. Because the interesting thing is, the human body actually doesn't like working that much and not having the time to take away from it.
Mine's
And
about two
so,
hours a day. That's pretty much, I max out.
yeah, and then what happens? Well, but you laugh, but that's so true. And then,
Yeah.
so then, of course, what happens is all people doing is turning up to work, and they're not actually being very productive.
They're going on cigarette
And so,
breaks. They're playing foosball. They're having coffee. They're having a lot more
or
conversations around. Yeah. Yeah.
they're just having unstructured meetings, or
Yeah.
they're sitting at their computer screen, not really sure how they want to pull it together, and then someone comes along and disturbs them, and then they get distracted by that, and
Yeah.
then something else happens, and then that report that they needed to get done by the end of the day, they are doing it midnight because they just
Yeah.
got so it's actually how do we look at what work really is? And you're right, there is a cultural issue, and it exists in the US and a little bit in New Zealand, certainly in Australia, where oh yeah, I worked 70 hours this week.
Yeah.
It's a badge of honor, and so there is a conversation to change around how you frame all of those things and what we value. So, people ask me, so what do you do? And I say, well, I'm faced a 4-day week around the world, but I'm learning to play the piano.
Mm.
And then, so you're out, meeting people, and someone asks you, then suddenly, I'm doing this 4-day week thing. So let's say I'm not doing something as interesting as 4-day week, because let's face it, when I mention that, most people want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm a lawyer. I'm an IT guy. I'm a this, that. I think, oh, okay, that's interesting. But I'm learning to play the piano. Oh, really? You learn to play the piano? Oh, that's interesting. And at your age, it's a whole different thing when you actually choose to value something else outside of this label.
Yeah.
And all that label does, it makes us feel good about the wrong things.
And achievement, right? Like many times when you
Yeah.
say I play the piano, they're like, "Oh, which band are you a part of?" You're like, "No, I just play it because I want to learn
Absolutely,
how
yeah.
to appreciate this instrument," right? But it's always like, even as you know, I do this podcast, but I also am a stand-up comedian, and it's like, oh wow, and I'm like, oh god, okay, here's a pressure to be funny, So it's
Which is a joke in itself.
which is a joke in itself, but everything becomes the thing, and that's why sort of a couple of points I've asked you sort of directed in this headed in this direction of how do you convince. And you've said that's your focus. It's not necessarily 4 days and a number of hours, but it's the 100-80-100, which is determines the model that you sort of suggest to someone. But in an achievement-based thing, which of course has come from different economies, I think India has taken inspiration from, and other countries have taken inspiration from the US, and countries and economies which have always sort of set the bar. How do you tell someone that working less is good? You can probably achieve more. You don't have to be seen working. But at the same time, how do you tell someone that you get free time to spend on yourself, which in which time you don't have to achieve more? Because many times when people aren't working, they're like, oh, I'm going to do a self-development program, and I'm going to be the best version of myself, and then that has to get me a better job. I'm saying the cycle is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. To break is so hard, right?
Oh, absolutely. Look, and it's not like it's going to be a fast conversation, and
Yeah.
it's going to be slow in places. But until we actually start, and just start valuing those things,
Yeah.
and fine, take a self-improvement thing if that's the thing that makes you feel like it's the right thing.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember that journey needs to be part of you understanding.
Yeah.
Actually, what's the self you're improving?
Absolutely.
So
The self is so determined by external parameters, if you want to call it, or external influences.
Well, I mean, so let's look at your situation. So you're a new dad. So actually, the self that you need to be working on is parenting, right?
Absolutely.
And being there for your wife, because the self she needs to be working on is the fact that she's had this miraculous thing happen to her actual physical body that plays havoc with her hormones and her emotions.
Yeah.
And that's a physical manifestation of how we maintain our population.
Yeah.
And so that needs to be accounted for in terms of how she returns to being herself as an independent person, separate from being a mother and separate from being your wife. But also she's now a mother. So there's this added thing in previously she was an independent person and she was your wife, and now she's mother as well. And it's like
an entrepreneur. So she's experiencing all the things.
So as an independent person, she had all these things as an entrepreneur or whatever, all these things that she had that was her.
Yeah.
And then she has a part of her life that is your wife, and and it's the same thing for you. You have this independence of who you are, and of course you a large part of that is that you're in the low vision community.
Yeah.
And then you've got this part as her husband, and now you've got this part as a parent. And of course, that's going to give you more sleepless nights than anything else than worrying about your career.
No, I'm sleeping for both of us. She's at her mum's place.
Especially since you've had a daughter. What were you thinking?
No, so my wife's at her mum's with our girl. So I'm sleeping a little. I shouldn't be saying this publicly. I'm sleeping well.
Well, look, the reality is that everything in parenting comes down to how you divide the chores based upon the capacity that each of you has. And, that's not uncommon for fathers to get more sleep during those early days. But you're probably going to be the one that'll be out when she's a teenager worrying about when she is.
Thanks, Charlotte. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Now I'm excited. As you said, it's so important to understand the fact that, and I speak about these labels that you mentioned, we're so defined by them and sometimes so trapped by them. And the thing is that we forget how complex we are and how many things go into making us into entire beings. And a lot of people capitalize on these limited labels, right? Saying, no, you are the IT guy, you are the lawyer, when you have so much more. And if you don't recognize for yourself how important all those other aspects are, and you take it up and work on that, then even the 4-day week or even a 1-day week won't help you, because you'll just be repeating that cycle, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the reality is, if being an entrepreneur is more important to you than being a husband or a wife or being a great parent, then those things are going to suffer. Yeah. So you have to, so therefore you're not being very good at those things. And so sometimes you just have to think, you know what, I want to be really good at everything. Yeah. But that's going to require me to have balance with everything. Yeah. So I can't be a wife all the time. Yeah. Because I've got entrepreneur and I've got motherhood. But they're all interconnected, because when I feel really fulfilled as an entrepreneur, I feel very happy about my sense of what I'm achieving as an individual. And I bring that happiness into, and whether it's entrepreneur or whether it's, success at work. And when you bring that happiness into your relationship and your relationship is happy, then that happiness comes over here. And then you feel like you're doing a great job as a parent. because you're bringing these two great things into your parenting, because generally they come first.
Yeah, yeah.
And you bring that into your parenting, and then you feel like you're doing a great thing with your children, and then that comes back here and that comes back, because all of these things are interconnected. You are not just one thing, and they're not silos, right? They don't exist without, and this is a large part of the conversation that we have, with companies, is that recognizing that people's lives are not silos. I don't necessarily want you bringing your children to school, to work. I don't necessarily, want you bringing too much of too many things from your outside life that interfere while you're at work. But what I want is for you so that you can be really good at work. I want you to have fulfillment over here. It means that you will bring a better you to work.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're looking for, is, and Andrew describes it, he wants people to be the best they can be at home as well as being the best they can be at work.
Absolutely.
And when you have those two things, it works. It creates a much better workplace. It creates a happier workplace. Well,
I know another thing, while it's easy to blame the employer or the company, I think many times what you just mentioned is that it also is on the individual to say, yes, I'm going to take this up and look at myself and decide what I'm going to do and how I'm going to balance it. Because while the companies might do it, say, take it, here's a 4-day week, they might, because many people use work as an escape, right? To get away from the house, from their families. Yeah. So it's interesting how you probably have to also approach it, because it's not just a one-sided issue with, okay, employers, you're wrong, employees, they're right, they're exploited, because it's quite nuanced in some ways as well.
Very much so. And we talk about, what we talk about is when you're putting together a reduced hour program in your business, it's a partnership between leadership and its people. And so what leadership is going, look, we acknowledge that we want to be able to reduce hours, but we need productivity to be measured properly, and we need it to remain at the same levels. And then employees go, well, look, we want to reduce hours, but we acknowledge that we've got to keep productivity up. And so there's this partnership. And so therefore what we're going to do is we're going to work together to see how we can achieve that. And most companies, when they go down this program and decide to do it, find that it's the best team building exercise that they ever did.
It's a conversation, it's a healthy conversation.
Problem solving. And then the other aspect about it is it's actually a really good business improvement program, because this problem you're trying to solve is, how do we improve productivity and reduce work hours? But you can use the same process to manage any other problem that might exist in the business. I don't know, like a pandemic. So
it brings up so many things which can be addressed.
One of the interesting things we found with Perpetual Guardian is, because we've gone through this whole change together with the 4-day week, when the pandemic hit, our people were able to go, okay, so how do we manage change within our business? Oh, we do this. And then they brought all of that same skill set back to the business. And so when businesses do this, they actually improve the way the business runs.
It sounds like it makes people more less, or rather more flexible, more willing to change, but also less stuck in their ways, right? Oh, I've been told I have to do this, but no, okay, something else is sort of I'm faced with. Let me work around that. So it sounds really nice.
It is, and it's quite interesting. I mean, it doesn't suit everyone. That's one of the. It was funny. The subject was being debated by our researcher from Oxford at the European Economic Forum the other day. And one of the criticisms was, well, it doesn't suit everybody. And I'm like, what workplace does?
It's called work.
There was a piece of research that came out of one of the universities in New Zealand that said that working from home didn't suit 31% of the population. And I'm like, so that means it suited 69% of the population, which is nearly 70%. So it's kind of like, so you're saying, it's this bad because it doesn't suit this smaller percentage of the population. and not acknowledging that it suits the larger part of the population. But
Yeah.
another question that comes out of that one, though, for me was, so if you're saying that working from home doesn't suit 31% of the population now,
Yeah.
did working from the office not suit 61% of the population before the pandemic?
Right.
We just didn't know it.
We didn't measure it, right? No, and it almost feels like running an experiment saying, okay, we're going to give everyone their salary or what they get as their salary, but they don't have to show up to work. They don't have to work. And then see how many people are happy. They'll be great for the first month. But I feel after that, even people be like, oh, I feel so pointless. I don't find my purpose. I think people just want to
absolutely.
complain.
And there's some research on our website, which is actually from Cambridge. And they look at exactly that point. How much work do we need to feel whole as a person, and they actually quantify that. And you're 100% correct. We actually do need work, and this is why when we're talking about productivity in the workplace, is that when you go to work and you're clear about why you're there, you're clear about what things you need to achieve, and you're given a workplace that encourages you to achieve those things, you get to the end of the day having achieved a whole bunch of stuff, you feel good.
You don't feel dragged, like you're dragging your feet.
You don't feel dragged down. If you go to work and you're not really quite clear about direction, and someone's told you this and somebody else has told you that, and you get through the day and you get to the end of the day and you really don't know what you've achieved.
Oof, I was in that position. Yeah.
And so as human beings, we like to know where we fit. And that doesn't have to be in the C-suite, and it doesn't have to, you might fit and just be perfectly happy being the person that puts that widget into that hole. And you need to be given absolutely every sense of being able to feel that that's an achievement that has value.
No, I think that's so important. And I think, on that note, Charlotte, I think everyone sitting, listening to this right now, many of them in India, I think, are really hopeful that, like how you said, we've sort of skipped a lot of the traditional routes of progress, right? In many cases, we've gone straight from no roads to the cloud. So I hope that we can, unlike the traditional time that it takes to adopt these measures, and I think there are a lot of young people, especially in the space of startups and people who have ideas and incubators and in incubator programs, who really are in a position to do this. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to share everything that your partner and you and your entire team at 4-Day Week are doing. And I hope it can be introduced to the Indian model, I think the Indian working system sometime soon.
Yeah, look, and there are companies in India doing it, so don't feel like you're out on a limb. But it's just one of those things where we need to just be chipping away at it, having those conversations. We will share your podcast far and wide, so therefore everyone that connects in with us will hear what it. And as a worldwide economy, we will work this all out together. None of us have to do it on our own.
No, fantastic. And could you tell people who want to find out more about your movement and about the organization, can you give them the details? I'll of course put it down in the description as well, but coming from you, I think it'll be great.
Yeah, look, the easiest place is to go to 4dayweek.com. That's the number 4dayweek.com. It's the easiest place. You'll find us there. There's links to where you can get Andrew's book if you want to read that. There is a white paper you can download. We've got another white paper that will be coming out in a few months' time. If you want to register to try and have a program near you, then you can do that. And there's all sorts of information and other bits of research that are on the website that you can have a look at. And you just got to open your mind to the possibility that you might be the person who makes the change in your organization.
Well said, and thank you for all the details and sharing such fantastic information and doing such great work. And Charlotte Lockhart, thank you. And I really hope you feel well soon. And I hope we can meet in India or New Zealand or wherever.
Oh, I'm absolutely coming to India. Don't you worry. All of your listeners will be able to come and maybe have meet me. Where I will be coming to India. My son is getting married in November, and he's marrying a very lovely Indian lass.
Oh, lovely. So
And
you're coming to India for the wedding?
so, well, no, the wedding's actually going to be in New Zealand because her
Okay.
family are all in New Zealand. But we do have, as an extended family, plans at some point to have a trip through to India. So
Oh, that would be great.
that will,
If you need a
that will
comedian for the
happen
wedding.
sometime.
If you need
Yes,
a,
yes, come to New Zealand for the wedding.
yeah, that'll be great. Just plugging in my other business here. But thank
Absolutely.
you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.